Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Scott Harkey from Endava. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, nice to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you could join us today. Well, Scott, to get us started, would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about yourself, your background in the payments industry, and the work that you do there at Endava?
Endava, yep, absolutely. So I've been in the payment industry for, I have to go do the math in my head, but about 10, 15 years. Actually started at Bank of America in a role really focused on helping enable some of the payments technology work that we were doing. And then carried that in to actually help building out a consulting company where we did a lot of focus on payments work, and then ultimately becoming part of Endava in the last 18 months or so. And throughout that whole time, it's really been focused around using technology to enable payments. So when I was at the bank, it was about our internal products and services, and a lot about just really delivering large scale projects, large scale initiatives to put into our customers' hands. As it moved into consulting, then it's more about helping customers really define their payment strategy around a particular piece of payments or piece of thing they were trying to do, as well as actually build things, right? Helping them figure out how to build things and bringing the team together to that. And then in Endava, the story continues. It's just now larger scale. So now it's a global mission to, again, help our customers really figure out how to build payments technology and make some decisions about, some of the best ways to go about doing that.
Very good and so needed. Well, Scott, we like to kind of try to distill everything that's happening in the payments industry and provide our audience with some, some clarity and some best practices. So, what would you say is the most notable trend in the payments industry today?
It's tricky picking a thing with any of these questions, right? Because there's a lot going on, but certainly the one that I'm involved in a lot, especially here in the US, is real-time or instant payments. This is something we've been working on for a number of years, so the theme is not new, but I think what is new and why it's my answer it's just become very timely. So in the US, we've had the RTP system from the clearinghouse for the last, at this point, I think 4 years, maybe even 5 years. And it's been a slow build, right? There's been work being done to continue to really develop the use cases around that, to really embed it both in financial institutions and into other providers in the industry, ERPs and others. I think the next big milestone is we have FedNow coming online next year. And while it's not live yet, I think just the knowing that it's coming has driven an additional set of organizations to really look at those use cases and really say, if we haven't already started building around them, what do we do? And it's huge. And I think that's why it's so top of mind for me, is because there's the rails themselves, right? There's RTP and FedNow. And around the world, lots of other ones. But it's also about how organizations rebuild their internal operations to handle, 24/7 around the clock instant payments, everything from fraud to, approval queues to exception management, all these things that have customer impacts that are changing. And so we spend a lot of time working with organizations to figure out what are the things you're going to need to change. Those roadmaps are often years, right? They're not months. And so there's, I think, a lot of impetus around how do we get started? How do we get building? What do we build? And to be really candid, like the value prop or the business case isn't necessarily clear in some cases, which always makes it hard, right? It always makes it hard to embark on these large initiatives when the business case is not readily transparent. So there's often quite a bit of digging inside an organization to really figure out how do you build business case around something like instant or real-time payments. And then again, what are all the changes needed to support it, and how do you build a roadmap around that? So it just feels like one of these massive things that's going to have a huge impact on the industry over time. We're starting to see the early pieces of that. And while I don't think we're going to see this sudden shift to, every organization has got it turned on and ready to go tomorrow, I think there's just a lot of work being done, and it continues to be a lot of focus on that particular topic.
That's right. To be honest, most of these organizations have legacy applications that were built perhaps decades ago, and they just weren't built with real-time payments in mind, right? So it's going to require a shift, a modernization effort, right, to eventually be able to take advantage of instant payments. Well, so my next question for you is about the biggest opportunity that you see today for organizations that process payments.
Yeah, this one, I think when I try to think through what is immediately useful, right? So again, I think real-time or instant payments is a big trend and a big thing organizations are doing work around. But when I think maybe about a more obvious business case or thing for companies to look into, I think embedded payments is one of the things that really lines up for me. And when I say embedded payments, I think there are lots of versions of this that people have put definitions around. But fundamentally, to me, it's how do you build customer experiences that embed the payment into the experience in such a way that removes friction from the payment? And that can be everything from the Uber ride, which has been the example for a really long time at this point of like the ideal experience, into to little things like paying for parking. When you drive up to a venue and it being embedded into the ticket price and automatically going through, or lots of other things along the way. We have new vending machines in the airport here in Charlotte that you open the door to the machine instead of it being like you pick an item. It's a cabinet, a refrigerated cabinet with all the stuff in it, and you open the door and it tracks what you took out of the door and automatically charges it to the account you have. So just it can be really simple things or it can be really big things. But I think especially for payment processors, acquirers, card networks, even if financial institutions looking for how do they monetize payments, I think it's looking at some of these use cases to say money movement, again, these kind of purchase use cases, B2B, international money remittance. There are all these areas where the payment can be monetized. And I think what's new about it is the ability to embed it into other experiences, the ability to partner with other organizations to create combined experiences. And that's where I think a lot of organizations are starting to look for, again, how do we drive more revenue opportunity out of these types of interactions.
I love that. And I mean, that's like at the bottom line, why modernize, why transform? Well, it has to have an impact on the bottom line, right? It has to provide some kind of an opportunity to generate revenue. That's the why for these organizations.
Absolutely.
So that's the greatest opportunity. What would you say is the greatest challenge that these organizations are facing today?
Yeah, fraud. Like I mean, it's hard to attend a conference or have a conversation with someone about any of these topics, whether it's embedded payments or it's real-time payments, without talking about fraud and just the increase in fraud, the increasing complexity of fraud. I think a lot of these new systems that we're talking about, when you talk about things like instant payments, where there's no revocability, where you're having to make real-time decisions about whether to send the money or not, it completely changes the way the organization has to look at fraud management. And it reemphasizes the need to ensure you have a lot more of the front end kind of fraud techniques and tactics applied as opposed to relying on time of transaction, because you just don't have the time at time of transaction.
Right.
With an ACH, you can put it in a queue and you can do a human review of it and make sure that it looks good before you approve it. With a real-time payment, there's no such thing, right? It has to happen in seconds.
Right.
And so what that means is the shift to, how do we look at KYC? How do we look at KYB? How do we make sure that we're doing, device-based authentication and looking at fingerprinting on the device to confirm that it looks like it's you? All these behavioral signals that become part of fraud, all that stuff already existed, but I think it's becoming more important as we shift into these different types of payments. And also, as always, fraudsters just keep getting better and more complex. Right. So we have to kind of continue to up the game. But when I talk to bank executives in particular, that is a thing that comes up more and more now. It's just the need to really double down on fraud prevention. It's in the news a lot, and things like the Zelle stuff that's happening. And it's just, all the P2P methods have the same kind of the profile, if you will, in the sense of friendly fraud and other things that could be happening that drive ultimately a negative customer experience. It's complicated, right? It's not always a simple answer. And so I think spending a lot of time focusing on that and figuring out those challenges is pretty key.
I think so too. It's definitely something that we hear a lot about at industry events and in the news. So this is my favorite question and probably the most difficult to answer, but that is, if you could leave our audience with one silver bullet piece of advice, what would that be?
This is actually really easy for me because
Oh,
it's a
good.
mantra I've been preaching for a while, and it's not easy to do, but it's to focus on the customer experience, which is obvious to some, but rarely applied consistently. I've been in large organizations. I've helped a lot of organizations, and for various reasons, there's always a tendency to start product first and think of, what is the product feature we're going to develop, or what is the next thing we're going to add to the product, or, oh, look, like this competitor's doing this, we need to do that too. And often the step of going back and saying, well, what does our customer actually want, right? Like maybe they don't want that experience, maybe they want something else. And so really taking the time to understand either the customer pain point or the customer opportunity. And when you're doing product design or when you're thinking about roadmap, really looking back at what is the end customer pain point we're trying to solve, or the customer value we're trying to add, and ensuring that that is ultimately what you focus around. Like I said, there are all kinds of frameworks and theories around this, whether it's jobs to be done or it's others that help organization drive to that. But the larger the organization, the harder this is to actually do. And everybody says they do it, right? They always say customer first. But again, it's really looking at it in the context of a specific initiative or product or feature and saying, do we really understand the pain point? And are we engineering around that? Or are we just iterating on our own ideas? Do we think we know? And so we're just building the next thing. So that's definitely it for me.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too. I mean, we're kind of seeing payments becoming a commodity, right? All organizations offer a variety of payment methods and whatnot, but really what clients are looking for is the value. What can you do to help me with my business and to be successful? So yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Scott. So I want to make sure before I let you go that our audience knows more about Endava and the types of services that you provide and how you can help them with navigating what's happening in the payments industry. If they want to learn more, how can they do that?
Yeah, the easy way is Endava.com, right? Always can go check us out on the website. All the social channels, LinkedIn and Twitter and everywhere else, always happy to engage there. There's a ton of content that we put out. We recently put out a global payments report where we actually went out and surveyed a bunch of the industry and got a lot of really good feedback, or a lot of really good information about trends in payments and some of these pain points and challenges. And so, some of these answers are informed not just by Scott's opinion, but by actual data that we've gotten from the field. But I think in general, all this stuff, this is what we do, right? Both me personally, this is the stuff that I've done, as I said in my intro, solving these types of challenges, helping organization work through these things is what I've done pretty much my whole career. And as Endava is the same thing. We have 13,000 people around the world. A large chunk of them are focused on solving payment specific problems for our clients. And whether it's technical or it's the strategic side of things, we love thinking through these types of problems and helping our clients figure out the best way to go forward. So would love to engage anyone. I also can find me on all those channels as well. There's LinkedIn or Twitter under Scott Harkey.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time and your words of wisdom today. I appreciate it. I know our audience does as well. And I just want to thank everybody for watching today. Have a great day.
Thanks, Donna. You too.